Hello, hi everyone. I am Sanjay Gupta. I welcome you on Sanjay Gupta Tech School. So, today is day 52 of this Salesforce Learning Bootcamp, and in this session, I will be discussing about Apex test best practices. And prior to discussion of best practices, I will be explaining you what is at the rate test setup and how we implement data factory class for testing Apex classes, right? So these two are new concept. Like yesterday we saw how we can implement data in our test class in different methods. So through test setup and through data factory, you can create data once and you can reuse it as many times as you want, right? So these topics we will be discussing in today's session. So before moving to the session, I just want to welcome everybody. So hello and welcome. So I can see Naina, Sujit, Akshay. So hi, hello, good evening, and welcome to the show. And today I will be completing this test class topic, and I hope you are enjoying all the sessions, right? So today also we'll be having some discussion basis on whatever I will be demonstrating. So whatever questions you have, you can just type in the chat and I will be answering your questions. So I'm just waiting for a couple of more minutes so that more folks can join, and then I will be starting the session. So meanwhile, like I'm jumping onto the chat, let's see who are greeting me. So yep, so I can see uh, Naina, Sanjay, Takshay, Praveen, Sikandar, Pooja, Little World. So hello, hi, welcome to the tech school. And jumping to the next slide. So if you are watching this session for the first time, so you should know about your instructor. So just go through with this slide. It will tell you everything about me. And if you are watching this day 52, so you can just start with day one, and all the admin and development related stuff you can go through, right? So you need to focus on all these virtual learning best practices if you want to really learn Salesforce admin and development stuff, right? So do regular practice, don't miss any session, practice all the exercises, those are available. And like in this practice sheet, I just added a playlist link. So to practice Apex trigger and test classes, so this playlist link is available. So you can just go through with all the videos where I am just explaining how trigger is implemented and how you can implement test class for that particular trigger, right? So you can just go through with this playlist and you will be having all the insights, right? And consistency is the key. So please do regular practice. Don't think whether you are having any offer or not. If you're a fresher or if you are experienced professional, then also you need to do consistent practice, because if you do consistent practice, then in interview you will be explaining concepts differently, right? Because if you are practicing things practically, it means you know how it is actually working, right? So moving forward, so in today's session also I will be explaining the topic, will be doing the demo, and I will be answering your questions. And if you want to become part of a self-help group where people are helping each other, so that group is uh, created for all the beginners, those who are Salesforce enthusiasts and they are learning Salesforce. So you can just scan this QR code and you can become part of that group if you have not. If you are already part of that, so you can utilize that group. And this is the upcoming days bootcamp timeline. So like today, Apex test class will be completed, and Jana is asking about like, do we have one more session? So tomorrow's session I will let you know. I need to prepare some content. So if that is ready, then I will be delivering that tomorrow. Otherwise, next session will be on Monday. So I will update you in the Telegram group about that, right? And next week we'll be discussing about asynchronous epics. Then on your demand, I just included Visual Force. So basics of Visual Force we'll be discussing in the session, and then 2 weeks we will be discussing about integration, right? So this is the upcoming plan in front of you. And just follow Sanjay Gupta Tech School on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Telegram, so that you can receive timely updates. All the important links like session tracker, exercise sheet, all these important links are available in the video's description. So follow Sanjay Gupta Tech School if you want to uh, like attend different boot camps for the free. And as I promised you, like Salesforce admin and development bootcamp is going on, and cybersecurity bootcamp is also going on. And let me tell you one thing, like from next month, I will be starting one of the Salesforce Cloud Bootcamp. So name of that cloud I am not revealing right now. That I will be sharing in the first week of next month. But from next month, you will be having one more bootcamp that will be related to particular cloud, right? So we have learned so far lots of admin and development thing. So I just thought like let's introduce one cloud specific session so that you can understand that terminology as well, like how basically in particular cloud things works, right? So I'm planning about that. Let's see what topic I pick other than Salesforce admin and development, right? But it will be specific to particular cloud. So right now, whatever we are discussing, admin and development, it is common for all the clouds. But there are some tools which are specific to particular cloud, so that I will be starting. And when that bootcamp related to that particular topic will be starting, so in that case, what I will do, like 3 sessions I will keep for this bootcamp, and 3 sessions I will be having for that particular topic. Okay, so that you can understand things parallelly. Okay, so let's jump to understand what is @test setup in Apex test class. So first I will be discussing it theoretically, and then I will be explaining how we can implement @test setup in the Apex test class. Right, so let me just see if I missed any question in the beginning phase. Okay, so Praveen is asking about like how we can uh, fill the exam form and schedule exam. Okay, so web assessor. So Praveen, at the end of the session when I complete everything, so just remind me, I will be explaining you in the session itself. Okay, so Abhay, if you want to learn collection, so you can go through the session tracker and the beginning videos, like if I say the numbering will be from 32, 33, 34, 35, session number 32 to 34, you will find 3 sessions based on list, set and map. So those are related to collection. You can go through with that. So Pooja is asking, do we need to learn Visual Force? As I heard that it is now not in use. Yeah. So we rarely use Visual Force, but to give you some idea, because lots of folks were asking, can you have basic sessions on Visual Force? So that's why I added 1 week for that. Yes, Vamshi, that I will be doing in night. So maybe 9 to 10 slot I will pick for that purpose, so that working professionals can join, because that will be targeting both freshers and working professionals, right? So now moving forward, so to understand @test setup, we just need to go through with all these points first. So in front of you, you can see lots of points are listed. So just go through them one by one so that you can understand actually what @test setup is. So basically @test setup is an annotation, right? So in last session, in yesterday's session, what we did, in each method, in each method, we implemented code to create some data, right? So with the help of @setup, @test setup, what you can do, you can create your data commonly in one method, and then you can just query that created data in different test methods. So first point says use test setup methods that are annotated with @test setup. So there will be only one method which will be annotated with @test setup. So you can use, or you can create that method so that you can create test record once and then access them in every test method in the test class, right? So you need to create that method once, and whatever data you will be creating into that method, that data you can access anywhere in the test class in different methods, right? Then next point says test setup methods can be time saving when you need to create reference or prerequisite data for all test methods. So in your test class, if you have lots of data that you need to create in different methods, and you are creating repetitive data. So if I take you to the org, so here you can see in this create opportunity test, we created account records. In this method populate rating insert, here also we created these account records, and in update also we created these account records. So in each test method we are trying to create some data, right? So instead of creating them again and again, what we can do, we can just implement a setup method that will be annotated using @setup, @test setup, and once you need to create the data, and that commonly created data you can query into different test methods, right? So last point says if a test class contains a test setup method, the testing framework executes the test setup method first before any test method in the class, right? So these are some points that you need to remember while writing this annotation @test setup. Okay. Now, if I move forward, so two more points are listed here, like records that are created in a test setup method are available to all test methods in the test class and are rolled back at the end of the test class execution, right? So whatever data you are creating in the test setup method, the method which is annotated with @test setup, so the data that you create in that method can be called through any other test method. And once execution is done, the data or the like whatever process you have done, everything will be rolled back, right? So I will be explaining it practically so that you can understand it more clearly. So next point says if a test method changes those records, right? So those record means the records which you have created in the test setup method. So such as record field update or record deletions, those changes are rolled back after each test method finishes execution. The next executing test method gets access to the original unmodified state of those records, right? So these all the points you will understand when I will be explaining you how we can implement @test setup, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to implement that practically in front of you so that you can understand how actually it is working. So I'm going to create a class, and I have a document of Salesforce where some lines of code are available. So I'm going to use this example to demo you how we can use @test setup. So I'm just creating a class named as common test setup, right? So here you can see this class is created. Now what I'm going to do, initial code I am just copying and I'm pasting, and then I will be explaining you, right? And this document is available freely. It is a Salesforce document which is available freely for the reference purpose. So we are understanding through that reference document. So here you can see this is a class common test setup. It is declared as private, here also we need to use @test is test annotation. Now if we go here, so you can see this is another this is the first method, and in this method we are using @test setup annotation, right? And the name of method is setup method, right? And here data is created. So what we are doing, we are creating a list of account and then iterating a loop that will be iterating 2 times, and account records will be created and those account records will be added into the list. And then we are inserting accounts, right? So this way you can create a method where you can commonly create the data. Now I'm going to show you how you can create your test method. So this I am just copying and then I will be explaining it line by line. Okay, so now in our code you can see, first of all we have this part which is a method and it is annotated as @test setup. So this method will be executed first so that data will be created. Whatever data will be created, that data you can query into test method. So here you can see we have a test method. Here we have a test method which is annotated with the help of @is test annotation, and the name of method is test method 1. Method name can be anything, right? So whatever data we have created here, that we can query. So you can see here we provided name as test account and we appended I. So I will be 0 and then 1. So the first account name will be test account 0. That is written over here. So what here we are trying to do, we are trying to query account ID where name equals to this and limit 1. So that account record information will be available into this ACCT. Then what we are trying to do, we are trying to modify phone number of that account record and we are applying update ACCT. So that particular account will be updated, right? So you can see in this method we have not created the data. Data is actually created in the above setup method and that we are querying here. Okay, so this way the data which you are creating in the setup method, so this data you can query in any test method that is implemented here. So next you can see for deletion purpose, again we are querying the data, and this time we are querying the account where account name is test ACCT1. So that account record information will be available into ACCT2, and then we are deleting it, right? So this way if you want to perform some operations you can do. So this is the first test method that we have implemented, and this test method is basically getting or querying the data which is created here. Okay, so now if I go here and copy this method as well, so this is another method. Now you will get more clear understanding. So if I scroll from the beginning, so first of all we have created this setup method which is creating the data. Then if I scroll down, so we have first test method where we have not created data, we are just querying the data and we are performing some operations. Then we have another method. This method is test method 2, and here you can see again we are querying the data twice. Now this time what we are doing, we are just checking whether the changes we made in test method 1, they are rolled back or not, right? So we are querying test account 0 and we are checking the phone number whether it is null or not. And here we are querying test account 1 and we are checking whether this account record is available or not, because in above method we updated the phone number from blank to some value and we deleted the second account record. So here we are checking whether we will be getting the fresh data that we created above here, or we are getting the updated data through any other method. So the answer will be when test method 1 apply any changes into the records, so those changes will be rolled back once that test method 1 execution is completed. When you are executing test method 2, So test method 2 will be getting the original data that you created in the setup method. Right, so here you can read these comments. So it says the changes made by test method 1 are rolled back and are not visible to this test method. Get the first account by using a SQL query and verify that test account created by test setup method is unaltered. So it will be equals to null. Here we updated it with this value, but it will be null because in test method 2, whenever you are querying that account record, so its original value will be queried. So test method 2 and test method 1 both are accessing that data separately, which we created with the help of setup method. Right, so this way what you can do, you can just create the data commonly, and then that data you can query here and you can perform certain operations. So I hope this way you understood the @test setup feature, like how we can create a common method where we can create some data, and in different test methods we can access that data. Right, so with this explanation, now if you have any question, so you can go ahead and you can ask your queries so that I can answer. So Anusha is asking when LWC classes will start. So Anusha, next month is packed for asynchronous Apex, Visualforce and integration. So I think in June, Lightning Web Component sessions will be starting. So as I told you, like in every session, I am explaining everything in detail. So that's why things are taking time. So in June, Lightning Web Component sessions will be starting, but prior to that, I will be covering the prerequisite, that is HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So Vamshi is asking, will setup method be private or public? If private, how we can use it in another method? So Vamshi, if your method is private, so private method we can access within the class. Private method we cannot access outside the class, but in within class we can access. Okay, Praveen is asking what is exact meaning of rolled back? Yeah, so it is not a silly question, it is important because you need to understand the rollback process. So rollback means like in this test method 1, we queried the account record, then we updated it through update DML, right? So once this method is finished, so rolled back means that account record will get back to its original state. Original state was like phone is blank. Here we didn't provide any value to phone field. It is blank. But here we are updating. But after completion of this method, after execution, when execution of this method gets completed, so phone will become blank automatically. So it means it is rolled back. Rolled back means once the process is completed, so record will reach to its original position, original values from where execution started. So that is basically rolled back. So in simple words, you can say no change will be there in the record. Process will get completed, but record will be unchanged. So that is basically known as rolled back. Okay, Praveen is asking start test and stop test. So I think those I already explained here. So basically, so listen it carefully. We are now talking about this test.start test and test.stop test. So basically these two statements control your governor limits. So in your test class, if you have more than one test methods, and for each test method you want separate set of governor limits for operations. So all the DML operations you can write in between these two statements, and in one method you can use this pair once, but in different methods you can use it repeatedly, right? So right now in this class we have three methods. So in each method we have used this pair one time. So for each method a separate set of governor limits will be available. So Naina, best practices we will be discussing today. So once I finish all the demonstration and explanation, Then I will be explaining all the best practices. So Rajiv, we can use a certain method one, right? We can use, so if you want to use a certain method one, so you can compare two values, you can. Uh, but for demo purpose, I just use this example. But in each method, you can use assert basis on the requirement. So what you can do in this method, like when we applied update account, so here you can write system.assert and you can see whether record is updated or not. So update DML, so you can assume like some trigger is working in background and that trigger is updating account record. So you can just apply assert, and what you can do, so here you can just copy and this way you can write. You can write and you can compare it with this way. So this way you can apply it. And before that, here you need to query the data, updated data. So first query the updated account record and then you can apply system.assert equals like this. Right, so this is simple example. So what you need to do, whatever I demonstrated you yesterday, so here you can try and implement this @test setup. So you can shift this account creation in the @test setup and record will be inserted automatically. So in case of insert operations, you just need to apply these two statements. You need to query and apply assert. And for update operation, you will be querying the data and performing these operations, update DML, and then you will have. So I will also explain this once I explain all your queries. So I will be modifying this with the help of this @test setup. So Praveen, I already explained this. If in a class any method or variable is private, so those can be accessible within the class. So here you can see this is private class. So in private class, if your method or variable is private, so that you can access within the class only. In any different class, you won't be able to access, but in the same class you can. Here, Sarchana, you can write normal SOQL also in between start test and stop test. But generally we write DML because through DML, your trigger flows and other processes initiates. So they may call different processes and they can have different SOQLs and DMLs. So generally we write DMLs in between these. SOQL, we already know like it will be executing once only. So we just don't prefer SOQL in between them, but DML for sure we write. So Anusha, assert I already explained in yesterday's session. So just go through the yesterday's session. There you will find, here I explained how to write assert. So I already explained it in detail. So you can just go through yesterday's recording, because if I explain every session in other sessions, so it will be very lengthy. So just I already told you, like, attend all the sessions, go through all the sessions, then only you will be able to understand. Yes, Ashok, this see all data we will be discussing. It is planned for today's session. So one by one, I will be going to explain everything. So someone is asking how to reduce runtime for a particular method. So you should implement optimized method. So number of like loop should be less, process should be simple, then only you can reduce runtime. So Vishal, LWC and all the prerequisite will be starting from June first week. Okay, now I am moving to modify this class. So here what I'm going to do, I will be creating a setup method. So static void setup, and here what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy and paste it. right? And I just need to insert the data. Okay, now what I can do, I can just comment all these lines. These are not required. So here you can see I'm just modifying yesterday's test class. So this is our setup method where I just created the data account records and I'm inserting. Then this is first test method. Here everything is comment because data is already inserted. So you just need to apply this SOQL and you can apply the assert statement. Then here also you can comment till here and this assert you can apply. Now here also you can comment it. Now prior to this you need to query the data. So here what you can do, you can query the data which we created above. So if you write this, so all the data that you created above will be queried and will be available into this ACC list. And then you can iterate that ACC list and you can apply update. So this way you can see from each method I just commented the data creation and data is created above commonly. So you can see how we reduced the length of the test class by creating common data using this annotation. Right, so I hope this way you understood how we can implement setup method so that repetitive code can be reduced. So this I already showed you how to reduce runtime. So if you reduce the length of the code, then your code will execute faster, right? And someone is asking about test.isRunningTest. So this I will explain, but let me complete other topics. Then I will show you an example of this test.isRunningTest, right? So moving ahead, so this I already explained you, at the rate test setup. Now next topic is how we can implement this test utility or data factory class. So basically what we did using this at the rate test setup, in a single class, if you are creating repetitive data, so in the same class you can create this setup method and the data you can just use in different test methods, right? So this is the use of this setup method, but it is limited to this class only. Now there may be requirements in future like the data which you are creating that can be required by different test classes. There may be possibilities the data which you are creating that can be required in different test classes. So what you can do, you need to create a separate class. You need to create a separate class where you will be creating the data and that class method you will be calling into the test class, right? So that is basically known as test utility or data factory class. Okay, so now first of all I am going to implement that for you and then I will show you how we can call those methods here. Okay, so I'm just creating a new class. So name of that class can be data factory, it can be test utility, it depends on you. So I'm naming it as data factory. And in this class I'm going to implement a method. So here we will be implementing method as public because this method we need to call into another class. So that's why I'm creating it as public. Its return type is list of accounts, so it will be returning account list, and name of method is create account record. Then it will be receiving some parameters like name, then integer count, like how many records you want to create, and boolean is insert, like you want to insert the data immediately or not. Right now here what I need to do, I'm just creating list of account. Now I'm going to implement a loop which will start from 1 and it will go till count. So whatever value of count is, here we have a count variable. So we are using this count variable here for condition checking. So for example, if count value is 10, so this loop will be iterating 10 times. So 10 records will be created automatically. So here we need to write account ACC equals to new account. Then ACC dot name equals to name plus I, and then ACC list dot add ACC. So this way I'm trying to create account records, and we need to set active as well. So ACC dot active equals to true. Now if is insert, so here we are providing a privilege, like if you are passing, like we need to insert the data immediately. So here you can write this if condition and you can write insert ACC list. So if this is insert boolean variable is true, then your data will be inserted automatically. If it is false, so insert won't work and we are just returning account list, right? So this way you can create a common method in the data factory class. Right now what you need to do, you need to call this method in your actual test class, right? You need to call this method in your actual test class. So here it is showing some error. Okay, it should be yes, not true. Right? So I'm moving here and I'm just deleting this test setup method, and here I'm going to call it. So here I'm creating list of account, ACC list equals to new list of account, and then ACC list equals to data factory dot, and from here we need to call this method. So I'm just copying it and pasting it here. Now here I'm just passing the name as test, number of record, let's say 10, and I'm passing true. So what is happening here, I'm just calling this create account record method. So here create account record method is available, which is expecting 3 parameter, name, count, and is insert. So for name I'm passing test, count as 10, and is insert as true. Right? So here we will receive test, here we will receive 10, here we will receive true. So the records will be created and true. Is insert is true, so data will be inserted. Once data is inserted, so that account list will be returned and it will be available here. So this way you can create a separate class where you can have some data and you can call it like this. Same, you can copy and you can paste it here also. As simple as that. So we created the data once. We created a method where data is creating once, and we are calling it again and again. Now you might be thinking, what will happen if I pass false here? What will happen if I pass false here? Right? So if I pass false, so this if condition won't be working, it is false. So insert won't work. So what will happen? The data which we created here, it will be returned as it is, but it is not inserted. It is not inserted. So it will be available here in ACC list. Now, for example, the common data which we have created, so here we just assigned values to these 2 fields. This is common for all, but for this specific method we want to set some more field values. So what you can do, you can iterate it again and you can set the value. So let's say industry equals to energy. So you just modified it, and then you can write insert ACC list. So this way what is happening, this is a common method which will be called through different methods. So name and active will be set for each method, but for this method we have separate requirement, like we need to set values for some different fields as well. So what we did, we just passed false from here, and the returned values we just iterated and we set some values, and then we applied insert operation. So this way, through this third parameter, you can just control whether to insert the data here only or to return the list and insert the data here in this test class. Right? So I know it is little bit different for you. So just try and implement this scenario in your system, because just watching this session and if you don't do practice, you won't be able to understand things. So just implement, and here like you can find crisp videos on all these topics. So after watching this session, if you want to have a scenario, so you can go through @test setup annotation for bulk Apex test and test utility class for bulk data creation. Right? So these are some scenarios that you can implement at your own. Now I'm just going to take some questions. Yes, Archana, if you are updating list of records, so you can apply assert for only one random record, so that you can validate whether that complete list is like updating or not. So Ashok, which third method you want me to revise? So Shiv Shankar, we are using name plus I, so that I will be changing from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So name will be updated automatically. So here what is happening? From here we are passing name as test. This test will go to this name. So here what we are setting, we are writing name plus I. So test plus 1. So test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4. This way data will be created. Archana, no, we never combine data factory and test setup method. So if you do so, what you need to do in test setup, if you are calling data factory methods, so in test methods you need to apply SOQL. So again, there will be lots of headache if you apply SOQL. So instead of calling data factory method in test setup and then write SOQL, so it will be better to call data factory methods directly in the test method. Yeah, so Ashok, difference between test setup and test utility. So in test setup, we are creating common data, but that common data you can access in that class only. Whereas in test utility or data factory, this is a separate class. And if you want to call it, so for example, I just want to call it in this class also, so you will be able to do so. So if you want to create some data here, so you can call that data factory method in any other class as well. So the difference is test setup method common data is available for only one class, one test class, but test utility or data factory data is available for multiple classes. Okay, so Jana is asking why we are passing this third parameter. So Jana, if we pass true from here, it means we don't want to modify this data. We need only name and active field set, and we want data to be inserted here only, and that inserted data will be returned. Sometimes what will happen, instead of name and active, you want some more fields to be like in the industry type, they should also have some values. So But you don't want to modify this code here because it is common for all the methods, all the test classes. So what you need to do, you can pass false from here. If you pass false from here, so your data won't be inserted here only, but it will be returned as is. Whatever loop you have implemented, whatever data you created here, it is not inserted, but it will be returning. And once you receive it here, so you can apply one loop and you can add some more fields values, and then you can apply insert statement. Right? So we are not updating that common method. Instead, we are calling it at different locations, and wherever we need some more fields value to be set, so there we can just like pass false, and then whatever data is returned, through that we can iterate a loop and we can set values and we can apply insert operation. I hope this makes sense now. Yes, Chandan, that data is created in test class only. So Shrivali is asking, data factory class methods are not required to be annotated. Yeah, so if you don't annotate it with @test, so let me just check. Yeah, so we don't need to annotate it with @istest, because why so? Because we are calling it from a method which is already annotated with @istest. So if you are calling it from here, so like it is already part of that process. Yes, Ashok, all the records will also be rolled back here in test utility as well. And it is not @test utility. Test utility or data factory is just name of the class. So Praveen, if you don't mention is insert value, so your code won't work. If I don't pass any value, so it will throw an error because I'm just passing 2 parameters and here it is expecting 3 parameter. So anyhow you need to pass the value. You cannot leave it blank. So either true or false you need to pass. So next is it ideal to use DML statement and before update context like create tasks? No. If you are using before update, then don't use DML. I think that doesn't make any sense. So Jana, I already explained this lots of time. Rolled back means you will be on the like step. So for example, if you have created a record, if you are updating that record and something is breaking, so everything is rolled back. It means you will come from where you started, right? So that is basically known as rolled back. So you will come back from where you started. Nothing will be applied because your process is failed. In Apex, it is known, but in test class, if process is completed, then also like data changes will be rolled back. Okay, so this way I hope you understood how we can create test utility and data factory class. And one more thing I want to show you, like here in this test, in this data factory, right now I just created one method, but if you want to create more data, let's say you want to create, so here in this method we are creating account. Sorry. Now here you want to create contact. So you can write create contact record and you can change it like for contact. Right? So this way you can change it for contact. So I'm not changing it completely, but I think now you can visualize in one test class we can have more than one methods to create different S object records, right? So just practice it yourself so that you understand. Now moving forward, we have one more annotation which is known as @test visible. It is quite simple. So @test visible I'm going to show with an example. So I'm not going to implement it uh, because it is very simple. So the idea is, yeah, so just read this line. Use the test visible annotation to allow test method to access private or protected members of another class outside the test class. Right? So we discussed like private we can access within the class. But now if you want to access private method or private variables outside the class, so that is also possible. So here you can see class is public, but this variable record number and this update record method is declared as private. So before that we are using @test visible, right? So if you do so, so in another class, so here it is test visible example. Here it is test visible example test. So in this class, if you are using test visible before any method, so make sure this is not a test class. Remember, this is not a test class. This is a general class. If you want to access the data which is available here, variable and methods into your test class, so here you need to write @test visible. Now, when you will be implementing your test class using @is test, so here you can call it. So this record number is a variable which is available in this test visible example class. And here we are calling test visible example dot update record. So both are declared above. Both are declared above. So you can see from this class, these two entities we are accessing here. So remember, in any Apex class, if you have private entities and those private entities like variables and methods you want to call in your test class, so you can use @test visible. So it is kind of an interview question, so you just need to be aware with this. Okay, let me see if there are any question. So Ashok, we never declare anything. So here you can see I didn't mention any annotation. So data factory is just terminology, right? You need to call to create the data. So name can be anything. It is not mandatory to use data factory or test utility. It is just generic term. You can use any name, and through that also you can create. Okay, so moving forward, next is run as. So someone asked like how to use run as in Apex tests. So yesterday I think someone asked, so I just have one example for that as well. So basically run as we use so that if you want to run particular block of code in context of particular user. So right now whatever test classes we are implementing, those test classes are running in system admin, like administrator context or system context. But if you want to run your code, any particular line of code, bunch of code as another user, so what you can do, first of all you need to create a user. So to create user, here we are creating username, unique username, then we are querying the profile, then we are creating the user record, right? Now once user is created, then this way you can write system.run as. What you can do, you can write system.run as, and I am passing you here. So this code, this highlighted code will be running in context to this you user, and you user profile name is standard user. So this code will be running in standard user context. So this way, if you want to run a particular code in context to particular user or particular profile, so this way you can create that user record with the help of profile, and this way you can run that code. Right? So let me take questions now. Yes, Chandan, after the session, I will be explaining you how you can like register yourself for associate exam. Okay. And Praveen is asking if the class is private, then we use is visible is possible. No. If class is private, then it is of no use. Class should be public. Okay, moving next. Next we have is test see all data equals to true in Apex test, right? So it is also important, and in interview generally this is asked, like what is see all data equals to true. We use it with @ is test annotation. So if I explain this to you, so here I have one more example. So all these links I will be providing in the like exercise sheet so that you can go through. So here you can see in the first line we are using @test, @is test see all data equals to true. So what does it mean? So just go through with these statement. Annotate your test class or test method with is test see all data equals to true to open up data access to records in your organization. So basically, if you want to access the org data, then you can use it. But as per best practice, it is not suggested. So you can just you can just read these statements by annotating your class with @is test see all data true. Allow test methods to access all org records. The best practice, however, is to run Apex test with data silo using is test see all data equals to false. Right? So, but if you want to access your org data, you can use it. Okay? But why we don't use it? But because in some of the cases, like in your org, if you don't have any data, so in that case, your test class won't be working. So it is always suggested like to create the data, because in some of the cases, like for particular objects, there may be possibilities you have no records. In that case, record creation is better. Okay, so I will be adding all these links in the session tracker here in today's session so that you can go through whatever I explained. Now, quickly, I'm going to explain all the best practices, and then I will show you how you can register yourself for web assessor, right? Or maybe like if there will be less time, because at 9 p.m. we have one more session. So maybe after this session, I can come live again, and if you have any doubt while registering, so I can just guide you, right? So let's see how much time this best practices will take, and accordingly I will help you out, right? So this is very important, like Apex best practices, trigger best practices, test class best practices. All these best practices are important to understand. Right, so these are simple statements that you need to go through one by one. Right, so just read all these statements, and I think everybody knows I already explained these while explaining different examples related to Apex test. So you need to start test class with @is test annotation, then start test method with @. So class also and test method also with @is test annotation. Then all the methods of test class must be static and void. Because they will be called automatically and they won't be returning anything. Then you need to name your test class as your original class plus test, or if you are using trigger name, so trigger name plus test. So always append test word at the end of your class, so that if you are working as a developer and your test class any other developer is using, so they should know through that name like it is a test class. Then prepare bulk test data which needs to be used for test run. So I already told you, whenever you write any test class, so you just need to implement that test class with bulk data. So whatever example I shown you, I also created data in bulk. So if you create data in bulk, so it means like you are just testing all the processes for single records and bulk records. If those processes are working fine for bulk records, so it means you have implemented them properly, right? So moving forward, we have more best practices statements. So at least 75% code coverage should be there, because if you don't have that much code coverage, so your code won't be deployed to production. Then calls to system.debug are not counted as part of Apex code coverage. So in your Apex class, if you have system.debug, so that won't be part of your code coverage. Then if code used conditional logic, so this I think I showed you on Monday. In Monday's session, I showed you if your code has if else branching, so you need to execute each branch. So you can have different methods so that all the process will be covered. Then make calls to methods using both valid and invalid inputs. So this also you need to take care. So just try to implement at least 2 or 3 methods so that you can provide some valid or invalid data, and in both the ways your Apex code should work properly. Then use the run as method to test application in different user contexts. So this I already showed you, like to use this run as method, you just need to create the user. If you create the user, then only you will be able to use this method. And write comments stating not only what is supposed to be tested, but the assumption tester made about the data and the expected outcome. So in your test class, there should be lots of comments available, because whatever you are assuming other developer doesn't know. If you don't write comments, so write proper comments so that if you implement something, so other developer will be understanding what you want to like explain, what you assume. Your assumption should be available in form of comments, right? Then I think this is last slide for today's session. So always write test methods will bulkify data. So you can use @test setup method, or you can use utility or data factory class, so that you can reuse whatever bulk data you are creating. And you can use test.start test and test.stop test to make sure that the actual testing of your code happens with the fresh set of governor limits. So these methods help you to reset your governor limits just before your actual code of testing gets executed, right? So for each test method, you can use this pair, and use assert statement to test whether the actual code is executing correctly and giving the results as expected. So this is very much required. If you don't write assert, you won't be able to validate whether your Apex code is working fine or not. And always try to test both positive and negative scenarios, right? So these all are best practices that I have for you. And now if you have any question, you can ask. And I think the problem related to associate exam or like web assessor, how to use it properly. So I will be scheduling one session just after the cybersecurity bootcamp. So I will come live again for 15-20 minutes, and then we'll be separately discussing about that there. Right, so let me jump here and see if you have any question. Okay, so Chandan, like registering is not the problem. Okay, you are able to register, but while giving exam, they are not able to log in to launch the exam. So I think launch button is available 10 minutes prior. So you just need to set proper date and time, and then you just need to wait for the launch button. So next question is, these test classes creates unit tests to perform. Yes, so if you run all your test classes together, so that is basically known as regression testing. So you can do end-to-end tests through those test classes, like if all the test classes are together working or not. So Ashok, @test setup is different. See all data is different. So Archana, asynchronous Apex we will be discussing next week. So next week when I will be discussing future batch, queuable, schedulable, so I will be explaining Apex code as well as its test class. So Praveen is asking a good question. If we have trigger and trigger handler, so you just need to test the methods which are available in trigger handler. Trigger will be covered automatically. So basically, if you are using C all data equals to true, then at the rate test setup annotation is not required, because you don't need to create data. You are just fetching the org data. So both are separate. At the rate test setup we use when we need to create the data in the test class, and this is test C all data equals to true we use when we need to get the data which is available in the org. So Praveen, run as, like, I will be sharing the links in the exercise sheet, so you can just go and have it from there. So let me see if I have links handy. Yes. So I'm just pasting them. So here in this, I'm just pasting some links. Yeah, so I'm just attaching it here. So here I just provided all the links which I demoed. You can go through. Yeah, so I will format it later on, but links are available. So you can just go through test visible annotation, you can go through run as, and you can go through is test. Okay, so you will be able to understand. So Ashok, we don't need to write C all data equals to false because it is by default. Okay guys, so I think I'm done with the session. If you have any more questions, so quickly ask, because I need to take a break, and then at 9 p.m. we have one more bootcamp. So if you have any genuine question, you can ask. Otherwise, you can also have a break if you want to attend upcoming session. And thank you for attending this session. So I'm just ending. I can see there is no question. I think today's session was fruitful. Lots of questions were there, and I hope you understood everything whatever I demonstrated. So just do practice, and through practice you will be able to understand it more clearly. Thank you so much, guys. See you after 20 minutes and another bootcamp. Thank you. Bye, everyone.